Pakistan. I'd like to welcome all of you to this very important and extremely powerful concept of yoga. The word yoga means to connect. It comes from the root word yuj. And what is the meaning of connection? Anytime you use the word connect, it simply means two things that you connect together. Yoga is a process of connecting the Atma with Paramatma. Yoga is a process connecting all of us to God. Yoga is a process of connecting a soul that is lost in this world without a purpose, without a meaning, and without direction, to a path that shows us purpose, meaning, and direction. Today, in this brief session, we're going to be talking about two very important things which are connected to the world of yoga: Hampi and Hanuman. Both are extremely powerful concepts of the yogic tradition. Hampi is the place where Hanuman was born, and Hanuman is considered to be the greatest yogi. Hanumanji has the role of Hanuman in the Ramayana. If you see, he is a uniter, he's a connector. Hanuman was the one who connected Sita and Ram. Hanuman was the one who connected Lakshman, who was almost dead, back with his brother Ram. Hanuman was the one who connected Ram back with Bharat. Hanuman was the one who connected Ram with Sugriv. Hanuman was the one who connected Vibhishan with Ram. So Hanuman plays such an amazing role of being a uniter and being a connector. The role of a yogi is not just to be a recluse, disconnected from the world, and only stay in the mountains and forests performing yoga. The idea of yoga is always involving connection. So the yogis are not just disconnected from the world, they go out, spend some time connecting to the inner world, and then they come back and help us connect with our inner world. So the idea of yoga is to spend time in seclusion so that you can upgrade. And then you come back to society and contribute in a way that is powerful and help others upgrade. Hanumanji spends sufficient time performing yoga, performing his tapasya, performing his meditation, performing his chanting of the holy names of Lord Ram. And when he does enough of that, comes back and serves. All of us, while we are all interested in the tradition of yoga, let us meditate on this very powerful personality of Hanumanji and see how the yogi within Hanumanji can help us reactivate, realign with the principles of yoga and understand the power of yoga in our lives. I'm going to tell you all a lot about the place of Hampi, but even more about the person who is connected with the land of Hampi. And most importantly, I'm going to talk to you all about the prayer that is connected to that person, and that is Hanuman Chalisa. So essentially, we're going to talk about the three H: Hampi, Hanuman, and Hanuman Chalisa. Hampi has been a place that has been explored by Western traditions for thousands of years. A lot of Westerners who reach out to Hampi, most of them go to the ruins of the Vijayanagara Samrajya. Look at all the forts and beautiful architectural wonders that are there within Hampi. While everyone is lost in those ruins of Hampi, or the Vijayanagara Sampradaya, there are very few people that actually seek out the inner truths of Hampi. Krishnadeva, who was one of the most powerful kings, actually teaches us a concept of going deeper. Krishnadeva was a very pious and a very sincere king. Very often, he would go out into his kingdom and just he would go out in disguise, obviously, and inspect the mood, the mindsets of people living in his kingdom. One day, he walked out in disguise to a construction site. There was a beautiful temple being constructed there, and he walked to that place. And while he was inspecting the different the premises of the temple, he just happened to talk to three people, and all three of them were construction workers. He went to the first man and he asked him, "What are you doing?" This man had a chisel and hammer in his hand. He was hammering on some rock. This man, as soon as he was asked this question, "What are you doing?" he threw his hammer and chisel down and began to literally shout at the king, obviously not knowing it is a king. He said, "What am I doing? I'm just breaking my head on this stone. Can't you see I'm struggling so much?" The king understood this man is a touch me not, The king walked away, letting him be with this frustration. He walked up to another man and he met this second guy who also was part of the construction team. And the king asked him, "What are you doing?" This man, he looked at the king and he said, "I'm so grateful to the king for having given me a chance to serve. I'm so grateful for him for having provided me. I'm simply doing my duty." The king felt a little better with this response. He went and met a third person. And this third person was actually carving the main deity that is going to be on the altar eventually. And the king went and asked this man, "What are you doing?" This man had a hammer and chisel in his hand. He was delicately chipping off. And when the king asked him this question, he dropped his hammer and chisel, just like the first man. And this man had tears in his eyes. And he said, "What am I doing? I'm actually doing nothing. I'm just holding the hammer and chisel. And the stone, all the unnecessary part is falling off by itself. And the beautiful deity of the Lord is manifesting. I'm actually doing nothing." The king was very impressed with his answer because he understood this man really understood what he's doing. And this man had a great sincerity in whatever he's doing. Yoga is not about doing something different. Yoga is about doing the same thing but different consciousness. Yoga is not about just standing on your head or pressing your nose. That's not only what yoga is. Obviously, all that is a part of yoga. But in a sense, yoga is about connecting with the higher truths, connecting with subtler truths of life. Yoga is about connecting with the higher principles of life. Hampi represents such a place. Hampi is the kingdom of Kishinda in the Ramayana. This is the place where Lord Ram walked thousands of years back. Hampi is the place where all the Vanaras, including Hanumanji, lived thousands of years back. Hampi is the place where the historic 4 months period of the rainy season, Ram actually spent in Hampi while waiting for Mother Sita. Hampi is the place where Ram spent 4 months chanting intensely the name of Mother Sita, sitting in a cave. Hampi is not just a tourist spot, but it's a yogic spot. Ram actually sitting in a cave for 4 months in Padmasana, with his back erect, with beads in his hand, chanting the names of Mother Sita. Yoga is about connection, as I said. While chanting the names of Mother Sita, Ram was connecting with her on an inner level. And while Ram was sitting on this mountain cave, chanting the names of Sita and meditating on her, connecting with her at a yogic level, Mother Sita was sitting in Lanka under a tree and closing her eyes and connecting with Ram intensely on a yogic level. In fact, when Hanumanji meets Mother Sita in Lanka much later, and he looks at Mother Sita, he is shocked to see that Mother Sita actually looks very much like Ram. Her facial appearance very much looks like Ram. You know why? Because she was so absorbed in Ram that she actually began to look like Ram. That's what absorption does to a person. And that's what the whole process of yoga is. The process of yoga is to be so absorbed in the object of your meditation that nothing else matters. The surroundings don't matter to you. Your convenience or inconvenience doesn't matter to you. Your pains and pleasures don't matter to you. And your current location doesn't matter to you. What really matters is the absorption in which you're doing it. So Hampi is a place of intense connections. And the beauty of Hampi is that it has a variety of people. While, if you look at the Ramayana period, there was Ram, who was very highly elevated in the path of yoga. There was Vali, who was very lowly, struggling in the path of yoga. And Sugriv was in between. He sometimes acted very elevated and sometimes acted very stupid. We'll all find these three types of personalities in all our lives. You'll find some people who are very highly elevated in their consciousness. They resemble Ram, they resemble Hanuman. You'll find some people who are very low in their consciousness. They resemble Vali. And there are some people who are struggling. They're sometimes high and sometimes low. They represent Sugriv. The three consciousness represents the three states of yoga. The higher state of yoga is the standard which all of us aspire to be. The higher state of yoga helps us reach tranquility. It helps us deal with adversities with calmness. The higher state of yoga helps us remain non-agitated while we are upset, angry, sad. The higher state of yoga helps us look at everyone with compassion. The higher state of yoga helps us understand and empathize with the struggles of others. And the higher state of yoga helps us be determined to achieve our goals. While the lower state, the Vali state of yoga, Vali also is a struggling, yogi in one sense. Obviously, he has failed badly, but nonetheless, he still has a chance. The path of yoga gives a chance to everyone, no matter how good or bad he or she is. The path of yoga does not discriminate. The path of yoga does not cut you off. The path of yoga does not disqualify you, no matter how bad your situation is. Vali was a struggling yogi. And unfortunately, because he had the association of Ravan, who was obviously a fallen yogi, he also chose that path of seeking pleasure over focus. Vali prioritized fun and thrill over higher consciousness and responsibility. Vali represents those yogis who do not see the importance of practicing connection with higher principles. Vali represents those yogis that do not see the obvious. Vali was told by his wife Tara that Ram is God. But though Vali could see, but he couldn't understand. The Bhagavatam, this is called Pasyanapina Pashyatu. That means you can see something, but you still can't understand it. Every person who smokes a cigarette sees that there's an art, cigarette smoking is injurious to health written on every cigarette, but still you don't understand. Every person who consumes drugs understands theoretically that it is harmful to the body, but still you don't understand. So everyone who is a yogi like Vali understands something, but does not believe it. And sometimes does not understand it, sees something, but can't comprehend it. And therefore, people like Vali, they need help. Sometimes they need help with Shastra, and sometimes they need help with Shastra. Shastra means knowledge. Sometimes these people have to be given knowledge, how to come out of a crisis, how to come out of an addiction, how to come out of a shortcoming, how to come out of a bad habit. And sometimes Shastra doesn't work. Sometimes just knowledge doesn't work. And then the second option is Shastra. Shastra means weapons, punishment. Discipline is also a form of yoga, because sometimes a person just doesn't understand how things are beneficial, and therefore a reprimandal or rather a punishing approach, a disciplinary approach is important. Not so much to punish them, but rather to help them come on the path of yoga. So So you have on one hand a yogi like Hanumanji, elevated in the path of yoga. On the other hand, you have a yogi like Vali, struggling and so badly disconnected from the path of yoga. And then you have someone in between, Sugriv, very much wanting to practice higher principles because he sees Hanumanji and gets inspired by Hanuman's sadhana, by Hanuman's practice, by Hanuman's devotion, and by Hanuman's yogic dedication. But Sugriv, like yogis, they don't know how to get there. Though they are attracted towards Hanuman, when they look at Vali, they get attracted there also. Sugriv, like yogis, represent all of us. We are all on the middle path. We want to grow on the path of yoga. On 21st June, everyone is excited about yoga. But as the days pass, as June turns to July, July turns to August, August turns to September, the yoginess starts going down. And by December, Jan, we are all in the more or less going towards Vali direction, And by next April, May, we are completely Vali. Right? So on 21st June, everyone seems to be Hanumanji. Everyone seems to be completely connected in the path of yoga. But somewhere around December, Jan, we are all like Sugriv. We don't know whether this is good or we don't know whether that is good. And that's when the struggling yogi really needs help. Sugriv is a beautiful person, not from an external point of view, but from an internal point of view, because he understands I need help. Vali is a struggling yogi because he doesn't even understand he needs help. There are some people you can't help simply because they don't want help. There are some people you can help because they're seeking out for help. Sugriv represents that yogi that is actively seeking out for help. And therefore, all of us on this path of yoga must take inspiration from Sugriv because we are all exactly like Sugriv in many ways. And that is why the path of yoga is so important for us. Sugriv took shelter of Hanumanji. And this is where I'm going to bring in the Hanuman Chalisa. And I'm going to share a very beautiful verse of the Hanuman Chalisa that tells us how Sugriv takes shelter of Hanumanji and how, if we take the shelter of the same Hanumanji who is considered to be the topmost yogi, there is hope for us on the path of yoga. This verse, just reading this verse, Buddhihina Tanu Janike, Sumiro Pavan Kumar, Bala Buddhi Vidya Devu Mori, Harahu Kalesha Vikar. The last two sentences of this verse are the most beautiful sentences. It says, Bala Buddhi Vidya Devu Mori, Harahu Kalesha Vikas. It says, Buddhihina Tanu Janike, Sumiro Pavan Kumar. Pavan Kumar talks about Hanumanji. Pavan means the air, and Kumar means the son of the air god, or son of Vayu. And Sumira means remember. When we remember Hanumanji, what happens? Hanumanji is someone who can give us few things: Bala, Buddhi, Vidya, Dehu. That means he can offer us three things which are essential on the path of yoga. Bala means strength. Strength also represents determination. Strength also represents persistence and steadfastness. The second thing that Hanumanji can offer us is Buddhi. That means intelligence to understand the path of yoga is the path of responsibility, is a path of elevation. So we all need strength and we all need intelligence. We all need Buddhi. All of us, without strength and without Buddhi, we will not find the right direction. Strength helps us in so many ways to be determined. Intelligence helps us find the right direction, the right path. And third, Vidya, knowledge. Knowledge shows us how to do something. We may have strength, we may have the direction, but if we don't know how to do it, how will we ever achieve the goal? So here, the combination of three is given to you by the greatest of yogis, Hanumanji. When we remember Hanumanji, these are three things that Hanumanji can give us: Bala, Buddhi, and Vidya. Harahu Kaleshu Vikar. With the help of these three things, only with the help of these three things can we overcome the Vikar. What's the meaning of Vikar? Vikar essentially represents the Vali-like mindset. We all have distortions. Distortions are not so much from an external point of view. Distortions are from an internal point of view. We all have a distorted mind. We all have a distorted consciousness. We all have a distorted ego. And we all have distorted habits. If we really want to overcome all these vikar, we need these three things: Bala, Buddhi, and Vidya. Hanumanji is the source of all these things. And why do we consider Hanumanji to be a source of all these things? For a very simple reason. Because he very, very strongly is convinced that I am not the source of this. Anyone who thinks that I am the source of knowledge, I am the source of intelligence, and I am the source of strength, that person cannot be the source of all this. Someone who thinks that I have no strength, I have no intelligence, and I have no knowledge, such a person actually has the highest knowledge. Hanumanji, when all the monkeys were talking about how much they can jump across the ocean, how far they can jump. One said I can do, there was an 800-mile ocean to cross. Somebody said I can do 10 miles, somebody said I can do 20 miles, somebody said I can do 30 miles, somebody said I can do 100 miles, and somebody said I can do 800 miles. But Hanumanji was not saying anything. Why was he not saying anything? The reason he was not saying anything was because, according to him, the question itself was wrong. The question shouldn't have been how much you can do. Because if you ask Hanuman how much you can do, he'll say, I can't do anything. But if the question is, how much can God get done through you? What can God do through you? Then Hanuman has an answer. According to Hanuman, he considered himself to be an arrow in the hand of Lord Ram. How far an arrow can go does not depend on the arrow. How far a bullet can go does not depend on the bullet. It depends on the person who is shooting it and the gun that is being used to shoot it. The arrow, how far it travels, it simply depends on the shoulder of the person who is shooting the arrow. So when Hanumanji is considering himself to be an arrow and Ram is holding that arrow, how far Hanuman goes does not depend on him. It doesn't depend on his strength. It depends on Ram's strength. So when Hanuman, as a yogi, as the most powerful yogi, considers himself to be insignificant, so he doesn't feel that I have strength, he doesn't feel that I have knowledge, he doesn't feel that I have intelligence, but he simply acts as a servant of Lord Ram. And because he is so submissive to Lord Ram through the path of yoga, through the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is the most powerful element of limb of yoga, Hanumanji strongly feels the presence of Ram in his life at every moment. And someone who is blessed by the presence of Ram in his life at every moment, that person has no shortage of strength, no shortage of intelligence, and no shortage of knowledge. And such a person can give anyone who approaches him all the three. And therefore, when Hanumanji met Mother Sita, of all the blessings that Sita gave Hanumanji, she blessed him profusely from her heart. One of the most powerful blessings that Sita gave Hanumanji was this. She told him, I bless you that the person you are trying to please will love you. Yoga is a path of love. Yoga is a union of the soul with the super soul, the union of a living entity, of all of us with God. The path of love is a path of permanent connection with God. Bhakti Yoga, which is also called the path of love, is a path of us connecting with God, reviving our lost connection with God through the medium of love. We are all trying to, just like Hanumanji, somehow develop a little attraction towards God through the path of Bhakti. But it's always difficult for us to develop the attraction towards God because we don't have strength, we don't have knowledge, and we don't have intelligence. But when Mother Sita blesses us, Sita blessed Hanumanji, And she blessed him. The blessing that she got was so beautiful. She said, the person that you're trying to please will love you. So when we are trying to love someone, and it may happen that we get reciprocated, it may happen that we don't get reciprocated. But when that person puts effort to love us, then we don't have to do anything. We just have to accept the love. So just like Hanumanji got this blessing from Mother Sita, he became so relieved after hearing that, because he felt, now I don't have to put my effort to love Ram. Ram will love me. And that's what the beauty of Hanumanji is. Hampi is a land of yoga because it reflects the mood of the perfect yogi Hanumanji. And all of us, while we are absorbed in the mood of Hanumanji, let us remember, chant, and absorb ourselves in the mood of Hanuman through reciting the Hanuman Chalisa, through understanding the Hanuman Chalisa. I have written this very beautiful book on Hanuman Chalisa, which I would highly recommend all of you to have. This book has every word of Hanuman Chalisa expounded or expanded into stories. So if you want to, most people, in India at least, know the Hanuman Chalisa by heart, but hardly anyone knows what every word of the Hanuman Chalisa actually means. So this book has solid understanding of every word of Hanuman Chalisa in the form of stories of Hanumanji. So just like I narrated something today, it's just a small trailer of the whole Hanuman Chalisa. Every word of the 40 or so verses of the Hanuman Chalisa is expounded and explained in great detail. Today, on this occasion of the International Yoga Day, I would highly recommend you all to be a yogi like Hanumanji. Hanumanji was a yogi, not just from a theoretical asana point of view. Of course, he could do all the asanas, but more than that, he was a yogi from a mood of trying to himself connect his existence with God. But more than that, he went one step further in the path of yoga by trying to add value to God's life. Most people are taking from God, but a real yogi is thinking of how to add value to God's life. Imagine if there is someone who can add value to God's life, how powerful that person will be. Hanumanji was the one who added so much value to Ram's life that Ram loved him so dearly. So when we are on the path of yoga, we have the potential, like Hanumanji, of adding some value to God's life. Now you might say, how can we add value to God's life? We are so small and we are so insignificant. Even for us to add value to God's life, we need the blessings of God himself. So Hanumanji was not proud that I'm adding value to God's life. He considered himself to be an instrument. And because he considered himself to be an instrument, through him, Ram achieved so much. Hanuman was simply an instrument, and he loved to be an instrument in the hand of God. Yoga is a path of submitting yourself through the process of surrender, through the process of bhakti, in the hands of God, and allow God to do miracles and superhuman activities through you. Thank you very much, and I wish all of you all the very best in your path of yoga. Hare Krishna.